When is a better time than Halloween to give myself lasting trauma? And what is a better way to do that than with a very confusing horror series? Higurashi When They Cry. My experience with this series is the couple of episodes of the original anime I watched when I was 11, before I decided, yeah, no, that's probably not appropriate for me. Hopefully this will go better than when I was a child. Question 1. Keiichi just moved to the rural town of Hinamizawa. There he befriends 4 girls, Rena, Mion, Satoko, and Rika. Everything seems normal enough until the night of the Watanagashi festival, a ritual held by locals that involves drifting cotton down the river to appease the local god Oyashiro. There, Keiichi talks to definitely not a couple, Tomitake and Takano. They tell him about the plans to build a dam in Hinamizawa, how the locals opposed it to protect their village, and however since the project was put on hold 5 years ago, due to something called Oyashiro's curse, 2 people have died every night on the year of Watanagashi. The next day, a detective, Oishi, comes to meet Keiichi and informs him that Tomitake and Takano have died. When he asks the girls about the incident, they very convincingly tell him they don't know anything. Rena in particular is definitely not suspicious at all. After that display, Keiichi asks Oishi what the hell is up with Rena. He explains she really hates windows and might also be haunted by God. Keiichi finds the locker of Satoshi, Satoko's older brother, who was in the same club as him but disappeared the year prior. Keiichi becomes convinced the girls were involved in this and that they are going to kill him next. And well, he's not wrong. Rena and Mion show up at his house and try to drug him. Keiichi blacks out and wakes up to find both girls dead. He knows that won't hold up in court though, so he writes a will explaining what happened and gives evidence connecting the girls to the previous murders. He runs away and calls Oishi, but it's too late and he dies from neck injuries while on the phone. The police investigate his home, finding his will, but some of it has been torn out and the evidence is missing. Question 2. How can this possibly continue with half the cast dead? Well, now they're alive again. The club participates in a game tournament. Keiichi wins a doll he doesn't want, so he gives it to Rena. Later, Keiichi and his dad go to a cosplay restaurant where he meets a waitress that looks exactly like Mion. She claims to actually be Shion, Mion's twin sister. Keiichi calls bullshit, but still meets her again a few times. Rena tells Keiichi that he did something to hurt Mion. He realizes that Mion actually wanted the creepy-ass doll and goes to buy a new one for her. It's there he meets both twins together and realizes, yes, Mion was pretending to be Shion like he thought, but Shion is also a real person who was pretending to be Mion pretending to be Shion. Make sense? Cut to the night of the Watanagashi festival. This time Keiichi receives law drops from Tomitake, Takano, and Shion. They decide for a bit of fun they should break into a storehouse that holds sacred ritual tools. To scare the kids a bit, Takano explains that Hinamizawa is actually a village made up of descendants of cannibal demons, and that the cotton floating ritual was originally done with human organs. The next day, Keiichi is told by Shion over the phone that Tomitake and Takano were killed. Rika, of all people, works out that Keiichi broke into the storage room. Someone else goes missing and Shion tells Keiichi it was because she told him about the break-in. Keiichi realizes Rika is in danger and goes to her house with Rena and Mion. Mion starts acting freaky and Rika is missing. Oishi explains that Shion has actually been missing since the day after the festival, and using super deduction, Keiichi concludes that he was talking to Mion ever since that night, accidentally revealing everything to her, the real murderer. Keiichi and Rena go to confront Mion. She confesses and says the demons inside her have taken over her body, all because Keiichi didn't give her that creepy doll. Mion tries to kill Keiichi, but the police intervene and she escapes. Days later, Demon Mion turns up at Keiichi's house and stabs him. He survives, and in the hospital is told by Oishi that everyone's bodies were found. However, their autopsies date Mion and Takano's death back to the day before they went missing. So either zombies exist or the police are incompetent. Obviously it's zombies. Question 3. Don't worry about any of that though, because once again, everything is fine. This time, Keiichi is told about the dam early on when he runs into Tomitake in the woods. He also meets Takano when he goes to the hospital for his cold, along with Dr. Irie, who should not be let within a kilometer of a school. Keiichi's parents abandon him for a bit, and being unable to cook, he ends up eating dinner with Satoko. He learns about her brother, Satoshi, who transferred last year. Oishi turns up at the school, but this time he's looking for Satoko. Keiichi is disturbed by him, and Dr. Irie intervenes. He explains Oishi is hated in the town because he brings misfortune to those around him. They call him the messenger of Oyashiro. Satoko's dodgy uncle moves back in with her and begins abusing her. The club reveals they have tried to report the abuse before, but nothing happened. This time it's not zombies, the police are just incompetent. Later, Keiichi meets Takano again. She tells Keiichi who she thinks is behind the curse, the 3 main clans in Hinami Hinamizawa. Keiichi goes to Mion, who is the next in line to be one of the clan heads, and begs her to make this year's victim Satoko's uncle. She says she can't do it, and once again nothing more can be done to save Satoko. So Keiichi says fuck it and does it himself. On the way back from the murder, he runs into Takano, who probably just killed Tomitake, so at least she won't snitch on him. The next day, everyone talks about how much fun they had at the festival with Keiichi. Keiichi was obviously not there, but instead they say Satoko was the one who didn't go, and her uncle was at home with her the whole evening. Personally, I would just take the clear, but Keiichi can't handle it, so he confesses everything to Dr. Irie. He says he believes him, but then sneaks away to tell the other doctors that Keiichi has lost his shit. Keiichi escapes and goes to look for the body, but he runs into Oishi and some deep south looking guys instead. Oishi flirts with him a bit and forces him to dig up the body, but nothing is there. He goes to Satoko's house to kill her uncle again, but finds her passed out instead. He tries to get her to the hospital, but on the way hears a policeman say Takano, Oishi, and Irie are all dead. Keiichi tells Satoko that they all died because he wished they would, and the pair end up at a shrine where randomly they find Rika's body. Satoko notices Keiichi has a weapon on him and blames him for Rika's murder instead of the 3 he just confessed to, and pushes him off a bridge. While falling, he wishes that the whole village would just die. Then he wakes up, climbs out from where he fell, and walks into the village, where he sees the military cleaning up hundreds of bodies. Apparently, toxic volcanic gas spread throughout the village, leaving no survivors aside from Keiichi. Question 4. Spicing things up, we start out several years in the past, following a security service worker, Akasaka, as he travels to Hinamizawa to rescue the dam construction minister's kidnapped child. There, he meets a younger Rika, who warns him to go back to Tokyo or he's really gonna regret it. He meets Oishi, and after a very serious game of mahjong, he agrees to work with him. They run into Rika again, who gives Akasaka another warning. He asks Oishi what the hell is up with the demon kid, and he says, God, actually, she's a reincarnation of a Yashiro and has the power to predict the future. They find where the child is being kept and fight the kidnappers. Akasaka gets whacked over the head, but the brain damage is mild and he gets back up. He then gets shot, but these guys are terrible at their job and he survives that too. Afterwards, Akasaka wants to call his wife, but all the public phone lines have been cut. He runs into Rika, who was clearly cutting them, but pulls some sleight of hand to convince him that she wasn't, and takes him to the Watanagashi festival. There, she tells Akasaka that several years from now, she's destined to be killed. Oishi catches up with the two of them and tells Akasaka his wife stacked it down some stairs and died. Cut to 7 years later, we find out while Akasaka's wife died, they managed to save the child she was pregnant with. They take a trip to visit Oishi, and we find out that the volcanic gas incident happened in this world too. Akasaka blames Rika's death on himself, saying he didn't understand her cries for help when she told him about the future. So he and Oishi do the only logical thing: write a book. We're halfway there, and yep, I definitely have at least 4 questions. Let's see how the answer arc will go. Answer 1. Starting in the past, but more in the future than the last story, we watch Shion get attacked by some thugs and get rescued by Satoshi. However, he mistakes her for Mion, so she just keeps pretending to be Mion instead of correcting him for literally no reason, and develops a crush on him. Shion runs into Rena, don't worry, she's still as freaky as ever, and tells her that Satoshi is planning to leave Hinamizawa. So she goes to convince him to stay, gets rejected, and decides to beat up a child because they're an abuse victim. Watanagashi passes, Satoko's aunt is killed, and Satoshi is suspected of the crime. Shion reveals her identity, covers for him, gets Kakegurui-style punished by the Sonozaki family, and Satoshi disappears. We jump to a year later. Shockingly enough, this timeline is actually consistent with what we have seen before. Unfortunately, it is the zombie timeline. All the same as before until after the festival, where to help clear things up, we learn that Shion actually never disappeared and she was pretending to be Mion the whole time. She thinks trying to manipulate the godchild is a good idea, but quickly learns it was in fact not, but manages to win due to an act of God. Literally, Rika ends herself. And of course, abuse victim hater Shion obviously could not let Satoko live too. So in the end, Shion killed Mion while pretending to be Mion, stabbed Keiichi, and wanted a better view of the ground from her balcony. In conclusion, zombies do not exist, the police are just incompetent. Answer 2. Winding back again again, this time we get to learn what the fuck is up with Rena. So her mother cheated on her father, they divorced, and she began to hate her mother. She smashed all her stuff, changed her name, and began hurting herself because she thought she was filthy like her. To be fair, if I thought I had maggots living in my skin, I'd probably be insane too. Now her dad is dating a new chick, Rena. Rena is actually a fraudster trying to scam him. But more importantly, she insulted Colonel Sanders, so Rena kills her and her business partner, who is Satoko's uncle. She dumps the bodies at the trash pit, but some meddling kids, her friends, run into her while she's separating them. Friendship is magic, so they all pretend it's fine. Takano once again appears to make massive law drops before dying, this time revealing that Oyashiro's curse is actually alien brain parasites. Rena loses her shit more than before and is on the run thinking everyone and their mum is trying to kill her. Keiichi goes to help her, but she doesn't take advice from child abusers and runs away. Keiichi then regains his memories from past timelines and realizes that everything Mion and Rena did to him in the very first part was all actually harmless, and he killed them because he was delusional. Now knowing this, he tries to reason with Rena again, but she has totally lost it and plants a bomb in the school. Keiichi disarms it and friendship wins. That is until 22 years later, when Akasaka visits the village again, and we find out the volcanic gas incident still happened and everyone is dead. Answer 3. We open immediately after the last story, kinda. Rika is waking up in a new timeline after being killed on her way home from Rena's display of mental illness. We learn that Rika has been crossing between timelines with Oyashiro, who is actually a chick named Hanyu, for over 100 years. In order to change fate, Rika makes little changes, like giving Mion the doll and showing Takano and Tomitake the storehouse. Akasaka shows up, and it turns out in this timeline, he listened to Rika and went back, so his wife survived. Because she saved his wife, he now wants to save her. But then he leaves again for a week immediately. It also turns out Tomitake, Takano, and Irie are all involved with the military, and are there to do some kind of research in Hinamizawa. It all goes pretty well until Satoko starts being abused by her uncle again. Everyone goes to CPS, but they're incompetent. Who would have guessed? They need more people to help convince them to investigate, so Keiichi strangles a grandma, and they get the support of the whole town to save Satoko from her uncle. Rika warns Tomitake and Takano that they will die, but neither of them give a shit, which doesn't make sense until you realize Takano was the one killing him the whole time, and she was then faking her own death. Tomitake should have really believed her though. The day Rika is meant to die comes, and everyone gathers to protect her. She tells them all about Hinamizawa syndrome, a disease which makes a person essentially just lose their shit, which has been responsible for all the deaths in the past timelines. Rika is the head carrier of the disease, and if she is killed, everyone in Hinamizawa will go crazy and kill each other. Oishi learns you shouldn't mess with electricians. Using Home Alone style traps, violence and friendship, 6 teenagers manage to take out trained military professionals. Unfortunately, Takano knows how to use a gun and everyone gets killed. Rika has her organs removed. On a happier note, the gas disaster is actually a cover-up for the military just killing everyone. So at least it's avoidable, probably. Answer 4. Alright, let's do this one last time. Starting out many years ago, we find Takano, or Tanashi, I guess, after she was just orphaned by a train. She gets to lick toilets at an orphanage for a bit before she's adopted by Professor Takano. He has spent his whole life researching Hinamizawa syndrome. He dies without getting anywhere, so Takano takes over his work. In the present, Takano is performing research that I think would be considered a war crime. I almost felt bad for Irie until you learn he likes removing people's brains just as much as Takano. Satoko has a terminal case of Hinamizawa syndrome, which caused her to kill her parents, so she ends up in hospital. Takano wants to see her brain, but Irie and Rika don't, so they just look at Rika's instead. The next year, Takano kills Rika's parents because they weren't too happy about the brain surgery. The year after, Satoshi kills his aunt and goes to Irie for help. Unfortunately, he's only creepy for girls and lets Takano have him. Oishi is off in his own world making up insane theories about God's curse to try and solve these murders, all because he's not dad was the first victim. Never doubt the police's ability to be incompetent. He meets with God and she sets him on the right path. They need a miracle to stop Takano, so Rika gets Akasaka of a future different timeline to awaken Akasaka of the current timeline's repressed memories. Hanyu joins in by pretending to be a student. Turns out she's also Rika's great times like 50 grandma. Rika tells the others everything, power of friendship, they come up with a plan to fake her death. They want it to look like nothing happens to the Hinamizawa villagers even though the head carrier of the disease is dead. Takano obviously sees through this and chases everyone to the shrine, which has traps that take out way more military officers than it ever should. Rika nearly gets killed, but Akasaka comes to the rescue at the last second. Tomitake breaks up with Takano while hiding under a table. That was her last straw, so she tries to kill the kids again. More insanely effective traps, friendship, and guns causes the military to back out. Takano refuses to surrender, literally gets forgiven by God, but decides she really just needs to kill some kids. So she shoots Hanyu. But Rika stops time and redirects the bullet, saving her. Tomitake comes back, proposes to Takano, and that's it. All is well, and for the first time ever, everyone gets to see the next day. That was kind of not disappointing, but not what I was expecting to happen. The ending was surprisingly wholesome. Even the actual villain got out of it with a caring husband. This just wasn't very scary after the first 2 volumes, was it? Rather than giving myself trauma, I think I've overcome something that has plagued me since childhood. How did I manage to fail a Halloween special? Whatever. Thank you for your time.